The year was 2347, and humans had finally made their place among the stars. They were no longer alone in the universe. They had met dozens of alien species and had learned to live with them in peace. But peace needed work. It needed meetings and talks and ceremonies that brought everyone together. The biggest event of the year was the Galactic Unity Summit. It happened on a huge space station called the Harmony Ring. This station floated in neutral space where no species could claim it as their own. Representatives from every known species came here to talk, to make friends, and to form bonds that would last for years. Daniel Price was a 32-year-old lieutenant in the Earth Coalition Navy. He was not special in any way that he could see. He had brown hair that never stayed in place. He had tired eyes from too many late nights reading reports. He was quiet and liked to stay in the background at parties and meetings. His commanding officer, Captain, had picked him for this mission because he was calm and would not start any fights with aliens. Daniel did not want to go. He was not good at talking to strangers. He was not good at making friends. But orders were orders, and so he found himself on a shuttle heading to the Harmony Ring with a dozen other human delegates. The bonding ceremony was the main event of the summit. It was an old tradition that many species followed. During the 3 days of the summit, representatives would meet and talk and get to know each other. By the end, pairs would form. These pairs were called bonded partners. They did not have to fall in love. They just had to agree to be connected, to represent the friendship between their two species. It sounded simple, but Daniel knew it would not be simple for him. When he stepped into the grand hall on the first night, his breath caught in his throat. The room was massive. The ceiling was so high that clouds actually formed near the top. Lights of every color floated through the air like fireflies, and everywhere he looked there were aliens. They were made of living crystal. Their bodies caught the light and threw rainbows across the walls. They moved with grace and spoke in voices that sounded like singing glass. They were huge. They stood 8 feet tall and had 4 arms and skin like gray stone. They were warriors, but they laughed loud and slapped each other on the back like old friends. They were small and delicate. They had wings like dragonflies and floated through the air, leaving trails of golden dust behind them. The Nereid lived in water. They came to the summit inside special spheres filled with their home ocean. They had scales and fins and eyes that glowed soft blue. Daniel walked through the crowd feeling very small and very human. He smiled at a who looked his way. He nodded at a who raised a drink in his direction. He tried to talk to her, but she floated away before he could finish his sentence. This was going to be a long 3 days. He found a spot near the food tables and stayed there. He watched the other delegates move through the room like dancers. They knew what to say. They knew how to laugh at the right moments. They knew how to make connections that mattered. Daniel did not know any of those things. He was about to give up and go back to his room when he saw her. She stood in the far corner of the hall, separated from everyone else. Her delegation was small, only 5 or 6 others, and they kept to themselves. But she was the one who caught his eye. She was tall and pale. Her skin was white like fresh snow. Her hair was silver and fell down her back like a waterfall of moonlight. Her eyes were red, not an angry red but a deep crimson that seemed to glow from within. She wore a black dress that looked like it was made from shadows. She was beautiful, but that was not why Daniel noticed her. He noticed her because she looked lonely. He had seen that look before. He had seen it in the mirror every day of his life. It was the look of someone who was surrounded by people but completely alone. One of the human delegates, a woman named, came to stand beside him. She followed his gaze and made a face. "That is Queen Vex," said. "She leads you should stay away from her." Daniel frowned. "Why?" "Because they are vampires," said. "Well, not exactly vampires. They do not drink blood, but they feed on the energy of living things. They can drain you with a touch if they want to. Their empire conquered half the galaxy 300 years ago. They killed millions, maybe billions. But that was 300 years ago, Daniel said. They are different now, are they not? Shrugged, people have long memories. No one trusts them. No one wants to be their friend. Look around. Everyone is staying away from them. Daniel looked. She was right. The space around the delegation was empty. Other aliens walked past them without looking. When one of them tried to join a conversation, the others would find reasons to leave. Queen watched all of this with a face that showed nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a calm acceptance, like she had expected nothing else. It is not fair, Daniel said quietly. Maybe not, said, but it is how things are. Come on. Let me introduce you to some, they are much more fun. Walked away, Daniel stayed where he was. He watched Queen for a long time. He watched how she stood perfectly still while the party moved around her. He watched how her crimson eyes followed the other delegates with something that might have been longing. He watched how she lifted her chin and straightened her shoulders when anyone looked her way, as if she was putting on armor made of pride. Daniel knew that armor. He wore it himself. He thought about walking over to her. He thought about saying hello, but what would he say? He was just a quiet lieutenant from Earth. She was a queen. She would probably laugh at him. Or worse, she would look at him with those red eyes and see nothing worth noticing. So he stayed by the food tables. He ate things he could not pronounce. He drank something blue that tasted like honey and electricity. And he watched the lonely queen in her corner of the room. The first night ended without Daniel talking to anyone important. He went back to his room feeling like a failure. But as he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, he could not stop thinking about those crimson eyes. He wondered what it felt like to be feared by everyone you met. He wondered what it felt like to carry the weight of your ancestors' sins. He wondered if she ever got tired of being strong. He wondered if anyone had ever asked her. Sleep came slowly that night, and when it finally arrived, Daniel dreamed of silver hair and eyes like burning stars. The second day of the summit started with breakfast in a hall that was almost as big as the one from the night before. Daniel sat alone at a table near the window and watched the stars drift past. He had not slept well. His dreams had been full of red eyes and silver hair, and a sadness he could not name. All around him, delegates from different species were eating together. They shared a table with and they were laughing about something. The big warriors sat with some smaller aliens that Daniel did not recognize, and they were trading stories about battles they had fought. Even the Nereid in their water spheres had rolled over to join a group of delegates who were planning some kind of cultural exchange. Everyone was making friends. Everyone was forming bonds. Everyone except Daniel, and everyone except the Queen sat at a table on the far side of the room. Her small delegation surrounded her, but they did not talk much. They ate in silence while the rest of the hall buzzed with conversation and laughter. Daniel watched a group of delegates walk past the table. They did not look at the Queen. They did not say hello. They just walked past like she was not there, like she was invisible. Kept her eyes on her plate. Her face showed nothing. But Daniel saw the way her shoulders tensed. He saw the way her fingers tightened around her fork. She felt every one of those silent insults, even if she pretended she did not. The morning was filled with meetings and talks. Daniel sat through a discussion about trade routes. He listened to a debate about resource sharing. He nodded along to a presentation about cultural preservation. None of it interested him. His mind kept drifting back to the lonely Queen. During a break between sessions, he found himself standing near a window that looked out at the stars. He was tired of smiling at people who did not want to talk to him. He was tired of trying to be interesting when he knew he was not. "You look like you want to be somewhere else." The voice came from behind him. Daniel turned and found himself face to face with Queen. She was even more striking up close. Her skin was flawless and pale. Her crimson eyes seemed to look right through him. She was taller than him by a few inches, and she held herself like someone who had been born to rule. Daniel swallowed hard. I was just thinking. Thinking about what? About how hard it is to fit in, he said before he could stop himself. About how everyone else seems to know the rules except me. Tilted her head slightly. Her silver hair moved like water. You are the human who watched me last night. Daniel felt his face get hot. I did not mean to stare. I am sorry. Do not apologize. It was refreshing. Most people try very hard not to look at me at all. That must be lonely, Daniel said. Something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, maybe, or something deeper. Yes, she said quietly, it is. They stood there for a moment in silence. The stars drifted past the window. Somewhere behind them, aliens laughed and talked and made connections that would last for years. Why did you come to the summit? Asked. You do not seem like the diplomatic type. Daniel shrugged. My captain sent me. She thought I would be good at this because I do not make trouble. I think she just wanted someone forgettable. And are you forgettable? I think so. People do not remember me when I leave a room. I am not brave or funny or smart. I am just ordinary. Studied him with those crimson eyes. I do not think you are ordinary. Before Daniel could ask what she meant, a group of delegates walked past. They saw Daniel talking to the Queen and their crystal faces showed shock. One of them whispered something to the others. They hurried away without a word. His face hardened. You should go, she said. Being seen with me will not help your reputation. I do not care about my reputation, Daniel said. You should. My people have a history that the galaxy cannot forgive. The sins of my ancestors follow me like a shadow. Anyone who associates with me will share in that darkness. Daniel thought about this. He thought about the stories had told him. He thought about the empire that had conquered worlds and drained the life from millions. He thought about all the reasons he should walk away. Then he thought about the loneliness in his eyes. He thought about how it felt to be judged for something you could not control. He thought about spending 300 years trying to prove you had changed while everyone still saw you as a monster. I do not think you are your ancestors, he said. I think you are just you. And I think being judged for something you did not do is unfair. Stared at him for a long moment. Her crimson eyes were unreadable. Then slowly, the hardness in her face softened just a little. You are a strange human, Daniel Price. You know my name. I pay attention to the people who pay attention to me. There are not many. A bell rang somewhere, calling delegates back to the next session. Straightened her posture and put on her queenly mask once more. I should go, she said. My delegation is waiting. Will I see you tonight? Daniel asked. At the evening gathering. She paused, perhaps, if you are not too busy forgetting yourself in corners. It was almost a joke, almost a smile. Daniel felt something warm spread through his chest. He watched her walk away, her black dress flowing behind her like shadows come to life. The other delegates moved out of her path without looking at her. She walked through the crowd like a ghost, visible but untouchable. That night Daniel did not hide by the food tables. He moved through the grand hall with purpose. He talked to delegates he had avoided before. He asked questions. He listened to answers. But the whole time, his eyes kept searching for silver hair and crimson eyes. He found her on an observation deck above the main hall. She was alone, standing at the railing and looking out at the stars. The lights of the party below made her pale skin glow. Daniel walked up beside her. He did not ask permission this time. He just stood there and looked at the same stars she was looking at. You came, she said softly. I said I would. Most people do not keep their promises to me. Then most people are fools. She turned to look at him. Her eyes searched his face for something. Lies, maybe, pity, some hidden motive that would explain why a human would seek out the company of a vampire queen. Daniel let her look. He had nothing to hide. Tell me something true, said. Something you have never told anyone else. Daniel thought for a moment. I joined the Navy because I thought it would make me brave. I thought if I wore the uniform and followed the orders, I would become someone who mattered. But I am still the same scared boy I was when I started. I just hide it better now." Was quiet for a long time. Then she spoke, and her voice was barely more than a whisper. "I became queen when I was very young. My mother died and there was no one else. I have spent 200 years trying to lead my people out of the shadows of our past. I have made treaties. I have paid reparations. I have apologized on behalf of ancestors I never knew, and none of it matters. They still see us as monsters. They still see me as a monster." "I do not see you as a monster," Daniel said. "I see someone who is trying very hard to be good." His perfect composure cracked just a little. Her lower lip trembled. Her crimson eyes grew bright with tears she refused to let fall. "Why?" she asked. "Why are you kind to me?" "Because someone should be," Daniel said. "Because everyone deserves at least one person who sees them clearly." The stars turned slowly outside the window. The music from the party below drifted up like a distant dream, and on that observation deck, two lonely souls found something they had both given up looking for. They found understanding. The third day of the summit arrived too quickly. Daniel had spent most of the night on the observation deck talking to. They had talked about their worlds. They had talked about their fears. They had talked about what it meant to carry burdens that did not belong to them. When the station's artificial sun began to rise, painting the grand hall in shades of pink and gold, had finally said goodbye. She had touched his hand briefly before leaving. Her fingers were cool but not cold, and the touch had sent a strange warmth through Daniel's whole body. Now he sat in his small room trying to understand what was happening to him. He had come to the summit expecting nothing. He had come prepared to fail at making connections. He had not expected to find someone who understood him better than anyone he had ever met. And she was a queen, a vampire queen, the leader of a species that the entire galaxy feared and hated. His communicator beeped. It was a message from Captain back on Earth. She was checking in on his progress. Had he made any useful connections? Had he represented humanity well? Was there anything to report? Daniel stared at the message for a long time. What could he say? That he had spent most of the summit talking to the one person everyone else avoided. That he felt more connected to an alien vampire than to any human he had ever known. He typed a short reply. "Everything is fine, making progress. Will report when I return." It was not a lie, not exactly. The morning sessions were about finalizing partnerships. Delegates who had formed bonds during the summit were encouraged to make them official. The grand hall buzzed with excitement as pairs stepped forward to register their connections. They had bonded with their partnership would lead to shared research on light-based technology. They had bonded with the warriors of Prime. Their partnership would create a joint defense agreement. Even the Shy Nereid had found partners among the amphibious. Daniel watched from the side of the room, had bonded with a diplomat named. They stood together laughing and talking like old friends, caught Daniel's eye and waved. She looked happy. Daniel tried to feel happy for her. He tried to feel anything except the heavy weight in his chest. He had not bonded with anyone. The summit was almost over, and he had failed at the one thing he was sent to do. Except that was not true, was it? He had made a connection. He had found someone who saw him clearly. The problem was that his someone was the queen that nobody wanted. He found in the gardens. The station had a whole section designed to look like a forest from some long-dead world. Silver-leaf trees grew from artificial soil. Flowers that glowed softly in the dim light lined the paths. A small stream ran through the middle, its water recycled and purified 1,000 times over. Sat on a stone bench beneath the largest tree. She wore a simpler dress today, dark blue instead of black. Her silver hair was tied back and she looked younger somehow, less like a queen and more like a woman who was very tired. Daniel sat down beside her, She did not seem surprised to see him. "The ceremony is tonight," she said. "The closing ceremony where all the bonds are announced." "I know. You have not bonded with anyone. Neither have you." She smiled, but it was a sad smile. "No one wants to bond with the vampire queen. I expected as much when I came. I hoped things might be different, but hope is a dangerous thing for my people." Daniel turned to face her fully. "What if someone did want to bond with you?" Looked at him with confusion. "What do you mean?" "What if I wanted to bond with you?" The confusion turned to shock. Then something else crossed her face. Fear, maybe, or hope. She could not seem to decide which. "You cannot be serious," she said. "I am completely serious." "Daniel, you do not understand what you are saying. A bond is not just a friendship. It is a promise. It is a connection between species that lasts for years. If you bond with me, you will be tied to the. Your people will question your loyalty. Other species will think you are strange or dangerous. Your career could be ruined." "I know all of that." "Then why would you even consider it?" Daniel took a deep breath. "Because I have spent my whole life being invisible. I have spent my whole life feeling like I do not belong anywhere. And then I met you, and for the first time someone actually saw me. Not the uniform, not the rank, just me." His crimson eyes were wide. "Daniel," she whispered. "I am not brave," he continued. "I am not smart or funny or important. But I know what it feels like to be alone in a room full of people. I know what it feels like to carry a weight that no one else can see. And I know that you have been carrying yours for far too long. You barely know me. I know enough. I know that you have spent 200 years trying to make up for sins you did not commit. I know that you put on a mask every day so no one can see how much it hurts. I know that you came to this summit hoping someone might finally see past your ancestors and see you." He reached out and took her hand. Her skin was cool and smooth. She did not pull away. I see you, and I think you are extraordinary." For a long moment, she did not speak. Her hand trembled in his. Her crimson eyes filled with tears that she had been holding back for centuries. "No one has ever said anything like that to me," she said finally. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Then no one has been paying attention." A tear slipped down her pale cheek. She did not wipe it away. "You would really do this? You would bond with me, knowing what it would cost you?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because everyone deserves someone in their corner. Because the past should not define the future. Because I think you and I are more alike than either of us expected." Stared at him for a long time. The silver leaves rustled above them. The artificial stream murmured its endless song. Somewhere beyond the garden, delegates were preparing for the closing ceremony, forming partnerships that would shape the galaxy for years to come. And here, in a quiet corner of a space station far from Earth, a human lieutenant and a vampire queen sat holding hands beneath trees that had no right to exist. "If I accept," said slowly, "I need you to understand something. My people will watch you closely. They will test you. They have been betrayed before and they do not trust easily." "I understand. And I need you to understand that I am not easy to love. I have built walls around my heart. I have had to. Letting someone in after all this time will be difficult for me." "I am patient," Daniel said. "I have been waiting my whole life to find someone worth waiting for." Laughed. It was a small sound, rusty from disuse, but it was the most beautiful thing Daniel had ever heard. "You really are a strange human," she said. "Is that a yes?" She squeezed his hand. Her crimson eyes met his, and he saw something in them that made his heart skip. Hope, real hope, burning bright after centuries of darkness. "Yes," she said. "Yes, Daniel Price, I will bond with you." The garden seemed to grow brighter. The stream seemed to sing louder, and Daniel felt a weight lift from his shoulders that he had not even known he was carrying. Tonight, at the ceremony, he would do something that no one expected. He would claim the heart of the vampire queen. The closing ceremony began as the station's artificial sun set behind the viewing windows. The grand hall was filled with every delegate who had attended the summit. Thousands of beings from dozens of species stood in a great circle, waiting for the bonding announcements to begin. Daniel stood at the edge of the circle with the other human delegates, kept looking at him strangely. She had noticed that he was acting different today. He was standing. He was not hiding in corners. There was a light in his eyes that had not been there before. "You look like you are planning something," said. "Maybe I am." Before she could ask more questions, the ceremony began. The Herald of Unity was an ancient being called the Keeper. No one knew what species the Keeper belonged to. They had been running the Unity Summit for longer than anyone could remember. They floated in the center of the circle, a figure made of pure silver light. "Welcome," the Keeper said. Their voice echoed through the hall without any need for speakers. "We gather tonight to celebrate the bonds formed during this summit. These bonds represent the future of our galaxy. They represent understanding between species. They represent hope." One by one, bonded pairs stepped forward. The Keeper announced each partnership and recorded it in the great registry that would be shared across all known worlds. The Yin stepped forward together. Their bond would bring light to dark corners of the galaxy. The warriors of Prime stepped forward. Their bond would protect the innocent from those who would do them harm. The Nereid stepped forward. Their bond would create new life in oceans that had been dying for centuries. Each announcement was met with applause. Each partnership was celebrated. The grand hall filled with joy and hope, and the sense that the galaxy was becoming a better place. Then the Keeper asked a question that made the room fall silent. "Are there any unbonded delegates who wish to step forward?" Daniel felt his heart pounding in his chest. This was the moment. This was what he had been waiting for. He stepped out of the circle and walked toward the center of the hall. The crowd murmured. People looked at each other with confusion. The quiet human lieutenant who had spent most of the summit in corners was now standing before the entire galactic assembly. The Keeper turned their silver light toward him. "You wish to declare a partnership, Lieutenant Daniel Price of Earth?" "Yes," Daniel said. His voice was steady even though his hands were shaking. "With whom do you wish to bond?" Daniel turned and looked across the hall. His eyes found standing with her small delegation in their isolated corner. She was watching him with an expression he could not quite read. Hope and fear and something deeper all mixed together. "I wish to bond with Queen Vex of the—" The murmurs became gasps. Delegates looked at each other with shock on their faces. Some looked angry. Some looked confused. Some looked like they thought Daniel had lost his mind. Grabbed the arm of the delegate next to her. "What is he doing?" she hissed. But Daniel did not hear her. He only had eyes for. The Keeper remained calm. They had seen many strange things over their long existence. "This is an unusual request," they said. "They have not formed a bond at the Unity Summit in over 200 years. "Then it is time for that to change," Daniel said. "Queen Vex," the Keeper called out, "do you accept this offer of partnership?" The entire hall turned to look at the Vampire Queen. She stood perfectly still, her crimson eyes fixed on Daniel. For a long moment she did not move. She did not speak. Daniel felt his heart stop. What if she had changed her mind? What if the pressure of being watched by the entire galaxy was too much? What if she decided that a bond with a human was not worth the trouble it would bring? Then began to walk. The crowd parted before her. Delegates stepped back to let her pass. Some refused to look at her. Others could not look away. She moved through the hall like a queen, her head held high and her silver hair flowing behind her. She stopped in front of Daniel. They stood face to face in the center of the circle with thousands of eyes watching them. "You understand what you are doing," she said quietly. Her words were meant only for him. "I understand. You understand that this cannot be undone. Once we bond, we are connected forever. Your name will be linked to mine. Your fate will be linked to my people. I understand. And you still choose this. You still choose me. Daniel took her hands in his, her cool fingers wrapped around his warm ones. I choose you, he said. I choose you not because of what you are, but because of who you are. I choose you because you have been carrying a burden alone for too long. I choose you because I see the person behind the crown. And I choose you because you saw me when no one else did. His composure finally broke. A single tear rolled down her pale cheek, but she was smiling. It was the most beautiful smile Daniel had ever seen. Then I accept, she said loud enough for the whole hall to hear. I choose you as well, Daniel Price. I bond myself to you and to your people. Let this be the beginning of something new. The keeper raised their silver arms. The bond is declared. Let it be recorded. Let it be witnessed. Let it be honored by all present. The hall was silent. No one clapped. No one cheered. The delegates simply stared at the human and the vampire queen standing hand in hand in the center of the room. Then a single pair of hands began to clap. It was one of the delegates. Their crystal palms chimed together like bells. Others joined in. They began to hum a soft melody. They stomped their feet in approval. Slowly the applause spread. It was not the enthusiastic celebration that had greeted the other bonds. It was more cautious than that. But it was real, it was genuine, and it was a beginning. Pushed through the crowd to reach Daniel. Her face was a mix of shock and something that might have been pride. You actually did it, she said. You bonded with the vampire queen. Daniel smiled. I guess I did. Your career is probably over. You know that, right? He looked at, she was still holding his hand. Her crimson eyes were bright with tears and joy and hope. Some things are worth more than a career, Daniel said. The ceremony continued. Other announcements were made, but Daniel barely heard any of it. He stood beside, and for the first time in his life, he did not feel invisible. Later that night, after the ceremony ended and the delegates began to drift away to their ships, Daniel and stood together on the observation deck, where they had first truly talked. What happens now? Daniel asked. Now you come to Prime, said. You meet my people, you learn our ways, and we begin the long work of building a bridge between our worlds. Will they accept me? Some will, some will not. My people have been hurt before. Trust does not come easily to us. Daniel nodded. I can be patient. Turned to face him. She reached up and touched his cheek with her cool fingers. You gave me something tonight that I thought I would never have, she said. You gave me hope. You gave me the same thing, Daniel said. You saw me when I thought I was invisible. You made me feel like I mattered. You do matter, Daniel. Never doubt that. The stars turned outside the window. Somewhere below, ships were departing, carrying delegates back to their home worlds. The Unity Summit was over. But for Daniel something new was just beginning. She leaned forward and pressed her lips to his forehead. It was a gentle kiss, cool and soft, a promise of things to come. Welcome to my world, she whispered. Welcome to my heart. The journey to Prime took 3 weeks. Daniel spent the time on his royal ship, learning everything he could about He learned their language, at least the basics. He learned their customs. He learned their history, both the dark parts and the brighter chapters that came after. Was patient with him. She answered every question he asked. She corrected his mistakes gently. She told him stories about her childhood, about her mother, about the burden of becoming queen at such a young age. In turn, Daniel told her about Earth. He told her about the wars humanity had fought against itself. He told her about the slow, painful journey toward becoming better. He told her about his own childhood, about feeling invisible, about always being on the outside looking in. They grew closer during those 3 weeks, not as queen and subject, not as representatives of their species, but as two people who had found something unexpected in each other. Prime appeared in the viewing window on the 21st day. It was a beautiful world in a haunting way. The sky was always twilight, painted in shades of purple and deep blue. The mountains were black as coal, stretching toward the clouds like reaching fingers. The forests were filled with trees that had silver bark and leaves that glowed softly in the eternal dusk. "My home," said softly. She stood beside Daniel at the window. "For the first time in 200 years, I am bringing someone here who chose to come." Daniel took her hand. It felt natural now. It felt right. "I am honored to be here." The landing was smooth. The capital city spread out before them, a maze of elegant spires and ancient architecture. They had built their civilization with beauty in mind. Every building was a work of art. Every street was lined with luminescent flowers. But it was the people who caught Daniel's attention. They gathered at the landing platform in the thousands. Of all ages stood waiting to see the human who had bonded with their queen. Their pale faces were hard to read. Some looked curious. Some looked suspicious. Some looked like they were ready to hate him before he even spoke. Squeezed his hand. "Remember," she said, "they have been hurt before. Give them time." Daniel nodded. He understood fear. He understood how long it took to trust someone after being betrayed. The royal guard escorted them through the streets. Crowds lined the way, watching silently as the human walked beside their queen. Daniel kept his head high and his expression calm. He did not try to smile too much. He did not try too hard to seem friendly. He just walked and let them see him for who he was. A child broke free from the crowd and ran toward them. She was young, maybe the equivalent of 8 or 9 years old. Her crimson eyes were wide with curiosity. "Are you really a human?" she asked Daniel. "I am." "Is it true that humans are warm, that your blood is hot like fire?" Daniel smiled and knelt down to her level. "We are warm, yes. Would you like to feel?" The child looked at for permission. The queen nodded. The little girl reached out and touched Daniel's hand. Her eyes went wide with wonder. "You are like a star," she said. "You glow with heat from the inside." "We all glow in different ways," Daniel said. "Your people glow with something too. I have seen it in your queen. A light that never goes out, even in the darkest times." The child smiled. "Maybe you are not so different from us." "Maybe not." The crowd watched this exchange in silence. Something shifted in their expressions. Not trust, not yet, but the beginning of something. The first crack in the wall they had built around themselves. The weeks turned into months. Daniel learned to live among them. He learned their ways of feeding, which was nothing like the horror stories he had heard. They could draw energy from willing donors without causing any pain. In fact, many described it as pleasant, like a gentle warmth spreading through them. Never asked Daniel to be a donor. She said she did not want their relationship to be complicated by that. But one night, after they had grown even closer, he offered. "You have given me so much," he said. "Let me give you something in return." She was hesitant, she was afraid, but she finally agreed. The experience was unlike anything Daniel had expected. When she touched him and began to draw, he felt a connection deeper than any he had known. He could feel her emotions. He could feel her hunger, yes, but also her loneliness, her hope, her slowly growing love. When it was over, she held him close and wept. "I have never felt anything like that," she whispered. "I could feel your heart, your beautiful, brave human heart." "Now you know," Daniel said. "Now you know that you are not alone anymore." A year after their bonding, the Galactic Council invited Daniel to speak. They wanted to know how the partnership with the was progressing. They wanted to know if the bridge he was building was real. Daniel stood before the assembled representatives of 100 worlds. He looked out at faces that were crystal and stone and scales and light. He looked at beings that had feared the for centuries. And he spoke. "When I was a child," he began, "I felt invisible. I felt like no one could see me. I went through life believing that I did not matter, that I was just a shadow passing through a world of brighter lights. Then I met someone who understood that feeling, someone who had been invisible in a different way, someone who had been seen only as a monster, never as a person. She was a queen, but she was also just someone who wanted to be known. I did not choose to bond with because I felt sorry for her. I did not do it to make a political statement. I chose her because she saw me, and I saw her. We saw each other clearly, without the weight of history, without the fog of fear. He paused and looked across the council chamber, sat among the delegation. Her crimson eyes were shining. There were conquerors once, Daniel continued. They caused pain that cannot be undone, but they have spent 300 years trying to be better. 300 years of apologies that no one wanted to hear. 300 years of reaching out hands that no one wanted to take. Humanity has its own dark history. We have committed crimes against ourselves that would make your blood run cold, but we did not let that define us forever. We kept reaching for something better, and eventually we got there. He stepped forward, his voice growing stronger. If we can extend grace to ourselves, we can extend it to others. The past is real. It matters, but it does not have to be a prison. We can acknowledge what was done while still believing in what could be. Queen is not her ancestors. The people are not the empire they once were. And if a quiet, invisible human from Earth can see that, then surely the great minds of the Galactic Council can too. The chamber was silent when he finished. Then, slowly, applause began. It started small, but it grew. Delegates from species that had avoided for centuries were clapping. They were not forgiving the past. They were not forgetting. But they were opening a door that had been closed for too long. After the council session, found Daniel on a balcony overlooking the station. She took his hand in hers. "You changed everything," she said. "One human with nothing but kindness and courage." "I did not change anything," Daniel replied. "I just told the truth." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "My people have a word for what you are. It means one who carries light into shadow." "That sounds like a lot of responsibility." "Perhaps, but you will not carry it alone, not anymore." Daniel put his arm around her. They stood together watching the stars, the queen and her human, the vampire and the man who had claimed her heart. The galaxy would not change overnight. Prejudice ran deep. Fear had long roots, but every great change started somewhere. Every new beginning needed someone brave enough to take the first step. Daniel had taken that step, and had taken it with him. In the years that followed, the bond between Earth and Prime grew stronger. Trade agreements were signed. Cultural exchanges began, and humans worked together on projects that benefited both species. And at the center of it all stood a quiet lieutenant and a lonely queen who had found something they never expected to find. They had found each other. They had found home. And in the end, that was all that really mattered.